Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and your excellencies, my lords, ladies, and gentlemen, welcome all to the final session of the WISE 2021 Global Summit. So we've had productive and insightful days. I think we can all agree that we've learned a lot, and we hope we can take all this knowledge and implement it in whatever capacity we can. In a moment, we'll hear from this year's WISE Prize for Education laureate, Wendy Kopp, and we'll follow that with a conversation between Her Excellency Buthaina Al-Nuaimi and the Minister of Education and Higher Education of Qatar. And also joining her will be Sir Anthony Seldon. He's one of the most influential voices in education in the United Kingdom. And then we'll be asking ourselves how we should re-engineer education to address the global issues that impact our lives in a panel called Fixing School, Fixing the Planet. So incredible actors from civil society, all committed to transforming the lives of many, and using their talents as a force for good will help us to rethink the purpose of education. And to close WISE 2021, we'll have a very special performance by the composer Malik Jandali on this piano right here. Well, this session, just a reminder, is live tweeted under the hashtags WISE Summit and Climate Action. And now it's time to give the stage to the 2021 WISE Prize for Education laureate. Please welcome Wendy Kopp. Wendy.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to once again thank Her Highness Sheikh Moza bin Nasser, the Qatar Foundation, and WISE for this recognition and for what this prize will enable across our global network. And I want to acknowledge as well the people from the Teach for All network who happen to be here, the alumni and staff members of different network partners, including and especially all those from Teach for Qatar. As I said a couple of days ago, this recognition is really a tribute to all of you and all of those all across the Teach for All community and network. So, as you've heard, I began this journey when I was 21, driven by the idea that we should channel the energy of a diverse group of society's most promising leaders into working with marginalized communities towards ensuring that all children have the education and the opportunity to fulfill their potential. Through this journey, through all the years with Teach for America, and now having the incredible opportunity to learn from so many pioneering social entrepreneurs across the Teach for All network who have adapted and innovated this approach, and from the brilliant and committed teachers and alumni they've developed, I have learned so much. I thought I would take this opportunity to share 3 of the most salient lessons and how they have shaped this pursuit in profound ways. First is about the purpose of education. For many years in this work, we sought to make the education system with its implicit purposes and goals work for all children. We focused most of our energy on providing the students who faced extra challenges with the additional resources and time and support that would enable them to attain an excellent education by the standards of the systems in which we worked. But across our global network, many began asking, what do we mean by excellent education? What should be the purpose of education? And so about 5 years ago, we came together to consider this question and to consider what we're working to achieve together over the next 25 years. We began by looking at where the world would be in 25 years and considered how much the economy is changing and the planet is degrading and the increasing polarization. We considered our values, including that the students our network reaches who have experienced inequity and marginalization in their countries are those who must lead us towards a more equitable world. Thinking about all of this, we were struck by a realization that there is no path to any of our aspirations for peace, justice, sustainability, inclusiveness, without developing today's students with the skills and mindsets to tackle the injustices in their communities and beyond, to solve the increasingly complex problems facing our society, to create meaningful careers in a changing economy. This must be the purpose of education, to develop students as leaders who can shape a better future for themselves and for all of us. Of course, we've long discussed that young people are our future, but we are rarely radically true to that notion. When we are, new skills become crucial, and some of the things that many school systems have been focused on fall to the wayside. In order to realize this purpose, we will need to come together in communities and countries all over the world to reconsider the outcomes we're working towards, considering local values and history, challenges and opportunities, as well as our global aspirations. What must we be working towards if we're going to develop young people as leaders who can shape a better future? In fact, we'll need to reconsider everything. For example, at Teach for All, we started studying the classrooms across our network where students are developing holistically as leaders with the agency, the awareness of the world and of themselves, the problem solving and critical thinking skills, the empathy and ability to work across lines of difference, a sense of well-being. And we realized that the mindsets and actions of teachers who are fostering these broader outcomes are different from those of teachers who are focused on affecting academic achievement gains alone. And so we realized we would need to develop a whole new approach for training and developing teachers to live into our purpose. We will, in fact, need to evolve so much to do this, about the relationship between students and teachers, about the curriculum, about how we structure school days, and the very priority we place on education. But it all begins with the crucial step of redefining our purpose, rooted in an understanding of today's realities and possibilities, our aspirations for sustainable development, and our belief in the potential of every child. And incidentally, once we've done this, we will realize that we, as educators, have perhaps the most important role to play in remaking our world. My second learning is about the need to develop what we call collective leadership to fulfill this purpose. With decades in this work, I have the privilege of seeing whole communities that were once at a standstill in in outcomes for children, where there is now significant progress. It's interesting to see what's at work in these communities and to consider how that matches up or not with where we put our energy in education. Much of the effort and research aimed at improving education focuses on particular solutions, policies, programs, technologies, classroom practices, and so forth. And yet, from looking across these communities, I can see that there's not one fixed set of interventions that is responsible for the progress. Moreover, I think there's a tendency to define system change as something driven by, top down by the government alone, and yet from what I've seen, it's not government leadership alone that differentiates these communities. What I'm seeing in the communities where systems are changing and children's outcomes are improving is many diverse people working together from every level of the system, recognizing their agency to solve problems, learning constantly and pushing and supporting each other. There are teachers and school leaders showing that something different is possible and investing themselves in the extraordinarily challenging work of meeting students' individual needs and inspiring them to achieve at high levels. There are students and their caregivers and the leadership they exert in their own education and also to advocate for what they deserve. There are school system administrators inspired by those students and teachers and school leaders to understand what's possible, who set a vision and make it easier for everyone in the system to succeed. There are policymakers and civic leaders creating the context, priorities, and resources that speed progress. There are social entrepreneurs and civil society leaders identifying and addressing the gaps in the system. And when systems move fastest, all these actors are working together and rowing in the same direction. What I've seen has led me to believe that if we want to address the massive learning crisis that persists while reshaping our education system altogether towards a different purpose, we will need to put a lot more of our energy as educators and policymakers into understanding how to develop the collective leadership that's needed and acting on those insights. No set of interventions can work sustainably without an intentional focus on developing the people in these systems, their sense of purpose and mindsets, their agency and ability to work together, and their understanding of the principles underlying solutions that are proving effective in similar contexts. We've defined developing collective leadership to ensure all children fulfill their potential as the core purpose of Teach for All's global network, and we're on a learning journey about how to accomplish this. How can we enlist still more of society's most determined, thoughtful, innovative people, those with lived experience of marginalization and their allies in this work? How can we develop ourselves and teachers and leaders and students with the mindsets and skills to exert collective leadership towards this end? How can we partner with communities and work within systems in a way that contributes to developing the people and relationships among them that's necessary for system-wide progress? My third learning is about how important it is to foster global learning among educators. From what I've seen over the years, any particular solution we believe in today will surely be seen as insufficient with the perspective of a few years. Realizing our vision of all children fulfilling their potential and shaping a better future will not be about identifying a fixed set of answers, but rather about a tremendous amount of effort and continuous improvement over time. The implication is that we should be investing in learning systems and networks, supporting educators to gain inspiration from each other and leverage the ideas and principles undergirding success in different contexts for adaptation in their own communities and countries, thus fueling a never-ending cycle of innovation and continuous learning and improvement. I've learned that this can and must be a global learning journey. When we first started out building the Teach for All network, I told myself that I would need to remember how different each country is and therefore how different the solutions would need to be from place to place. What soon struck me, though, is that as different as cultures and contexts are, there are also remarkable similarities in the roots of the issues facing the most marginalized students and communities. In countries all over the world, whole segments of students face extra challenges, including discrimination and poverty. They attend schools that were not designed to meet their extra needs and that were not designed to foster their leadership. And a prevailing ideology of low expectations for these marginalized students fuels this cycle. At first, this seemed really depressing, as if we were fighting the forces of gravity. But we soon saw a silver lining. This means that the solutions are a lot more shareable across borders than we've assumed in education, and that could provide a huge opportunity for speeding up progress. What I've learned is that we need to work in ways that are both locally rooted and globally informed. Everything in education needs to be contextualized to local circumstances and culture. We must be centered in affirming the identities and histories of the students and communities we're working with, and work in ways that are rooted in an understanding of the values they hold dear. And there is tremendous power in exposure to what's working in other communities for shifting mindsets and understandings about what is possible. And to be clear, we've seen that educators in the wealthiest countries in our network have learned at least as much from those with the least economic resources as the other way around. There's something so powerful about seeing the perspectives and practices inspired by different cultures and even by a lack of resources. I've come to believe that if we can act on these three learnings, by reorienting education towards the purpose of developing students who can shape a better future, making intentional efforts to develop locally rooted collective leadership for realizing this purpose, and creating opportunities for these local leaders to learn from each other across borders, we can change the trajectory of the world. Which brings me to my closing thought. I want to close with a message to young adults out there across the world who are searching for where to channel your invaluable energy. Some who've had the privilege of attaining great educations, perhaps despite the system, whether you grew up experiencing inequities or come from greater privilege. Speaking personally, I feel incredibly lucky to have found my way to this pursuit so early in my career, early enough that I've been able to learn about the complexity of the challenges and the solutions, and to have a chance to make a meaningful impact in the face of something so big and so important. For all of you determined, thoughtful young adults, especially the innovators among you, as you consider how to live a life of meaning, I hope you'll consider channeling your energy into working with many others in our world's most marginalized communities to transform the systems around children who have the potential to remake our world. I cannot imagine a more important and fulfilling pursuit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and congratulations once again. Well, like Wendy Kopp, my next panelists have dedicated their entire lives, really, to educating kids and young adults. It's a great honor to now welcome to the stage Her Excellency Buthayn Al-Nuaimi and Sir Anthony Selden. Welcome. Welcome, Sir Anthony. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. It's good to see you both. Sir Anthony, let me start out by saying this. You're an acute observer of our contemporary history. You've also recently created, with the British newspaper The Times, a commission to revisit the national education system in light of the recent crisis, of course. So why do you think it took a pandemic and a forced seismic shift in how education is delivered to really get us thinking on a larger scale about redesigning education systems?
Well, first, can I salute the organizers for this marvelous event and everybody who's come in the face of the pandemic, because I think it shows real courage and real imagination. I think this is a really excellent international event, exemplifying what Wendy Kopp has just been telling us so brilliantly about in her 3 points. Look, the pandemic is going to go on and on. There is no guarantee that the pandemic is going to create the changes that we desperately need in education that Wendy Kopp talked about and others have been talking about over this conference. We need more than a pandemic. We need enlightened leadership, such as Her Excellency has been talking about, to recognize that education is about much more than just passing exams. It's about much more than just intellectual academic learning. It's also about learning with the hand and the heart and the soul as well as the mind. It's about active learning. It's about learning about compassion, how to become a better human being, learning how we can play our parts in society, how we can live with ourselves so we don't see the rise and rise and rise of mental illness amongst the young that is unnecessary and is partly caused by the insensitive focus on merely academic learning as the only validator of a school and a child. So the pandemic, we need more than just the pandemic, we need real leadership to make the difference.
Okay, Your Excellency, Bethany Al-Naimi, do you think this moment has more potential to make these powerful shifts that Sir Anthony is referring to in education policy than perhaps any time in the previous past?
We have seen in the past decade a lot of changes in the way we work because of the technological advancement. So with the pandemic, it only has accelerated the transition to that. Technology has become and will continue to be an integral part of education. It is our responsibility to prepare our students for the future, and before that, to prepare our teachers. What we have done here in Qatar, the e-learning has been introduced in the public school system in 2012, but it hasn't been fully integrated in the teaching and learning until the pandemic. And when it has fully been implemented, we have realized that the strengths and the weaknesses the system has, which led us to redesign our e-learning strategy, which will be launched next January. Our e-learning strategy has been designed, taken into consideration all the lessons learned from the pandemic, and it also through a consultation process with all the education stakeholders. It has 4 pillars. The first one is governance, how to enable an environment that would promote innovation and empower schools. The second pillar is digital skills and professional development, not only for students, but students, teachers, administration and staff. And digital content, it has to be flexible, it has to be personalized. And the last aspect is the infrastructure, to ensure accessibility to all.
Right. So what aspects of education, though, do you think need the most urgent attention right now with the current challenges that have been created by the pandemic?
Just like what Sir Anthony Sandon mentioned, it's the development, it's the holistic development of the child to prioritize their mental health. You know, research years ago have shown the correlation between mindset and academic achievement, you know, but we have seen it so clear in the pandemic. We have seen, a rising level of anxiety, depression, mental health issues. So it's very important for us to address that, to enable learning, to help, to help students get to learn. And which we bring the emphasis on the social and emotional learning in schools. It is the teacher's responsibility, so implementing programs, having a framework that places an equal emphasis on the mental health and the social and emotional as equal as the cognitive ability of the students.
Here's the thing, Sir Anthony, this is something, in fact, that you advocate for. You advocate for developing academia and character well-being together. You say they should go hand in hand. And also, you're the president and co-founder of the International Positive Education Network and the co-founder of Action for Happiness. And that is a movement, for anyone that might not be familiar with it, that's a movement of people committed to building a happier and more caring society. So tell us how those came about and why they're important.
So they're important because, as the education minister was saying, mental illness is rising and rising, isn't it, in wherever we are in our schools and in our countries. But it doesn't have to rise. The more that we look after children's well-being, we see their academic results also improving, not going down. The happier they are, the quicker their results rise. And if we can help, when people are young, learn the habits of kindness to themselves as well as to other people, the habits of agency, the habits of learning how to look after themselves, if we can help them avoid mental illness when they are young, they will have a much better chance of leading happier lives as adults. So the key to all of this is the learning of good habits, habits of having a healthy body, learning how to look after your body. If you look after your body, it will look after you. Learning how to savor our social relationships, learning how to develop a sense of meaning and purpose in life, a sense of kindness and empathy towards others, recognizing the truth that happy people are also good people. There's a correlation between being goodness and happiness. You will never, ever find in the world ever a nasty person who is happy. Look at their eyes. Their eyes will always be a giveaway. So we can learn these habits at school, and it will not go against academic results. It will help academic results. It will help our young people also to become better adults, more socially connected to each other and to society, and learning more who they are as human beings. At the moment, our education system is only interested in their exam passes, not in them, as the minister was saying, not in the holistic them. We are much more than just our minds. We are our minds, but we're more than just our minds. We are our hearts, our soul, our bodies, our hands. And schools, the best schools in the world, even with very little money, can do this.
What about, Her Excellency was mentioning just a moment ago about the role of technology and the rise of it that we've seen during the past 2 years. Now, Sir Anthony, some say young people already have, well, too much technology in their lives today. What's your response to those who wish to reduce screens and technology, particularly in the learning environment in that context?
Yeah, I mean, that's another such a great question. Technology can either be a great good or a great bad. Young people are spending 4, 5, 6 hours a day on technology, and it can take them away from each other. They can look at images, body images, and think, I can never be that beautiful, or I can never be that good, and it damages their self-esteem. It can do enormous damage. Bullying, cyberbullying, these are all very bad things. So we need to regulate it very well, which is why we've set up the Institute for the Ethics of AI in Education, to ensure that, and AI takes us into altogether the stratosphere of digitalization. At the moment, we're just in the foothills of what can happen. But at best, this new technology will give one-on-one teaching to every child, even in the poorest countries in South America and Africa. It can personalize the learning, it can stimulate them, it can enchant them. They can learn early in the morning or in the evening if they're late night workers, or at weekends and holidays. It can also develop them as human beings responsively, and it can create much more time in the school day, because the academic learning is done much more efficiently with the one-on-one teaching, much more time for the arts, music, looking forward to the performance later, and for sports, for volunteering, for character building, for social activity. But you know, as I was saying in a session earlier today, every single person here at this great event has to, and as Wendy Kopp was also saying, we are the agents. As she finished in her peroration, we are the future, and we have to understand what's happening to shape it in the interests of everybody.
Your Excellency, specifically on the role of technology, what is the responsibility of policymakers at the level of government, of course, and school systems in that shift to online learning as well as hybrid systems?
I think we need to focus on 3 elements. The first one is the students, and then teachers and the curriculum. So for the students, it's very important to prioritize their mental health and well-being. The second one would be for teachers, we need to rethink and redesign teacher training and even the initial teacher development. We always talk about, how to prepare teachers to use technology. I think it's important that we also, use technology in teacher training, using, whether it's artificial intelligence, IR, or other means of that. And then the curriculum, it's very important that it becomes interactive and flexible and personalized to the students, having personalized pathways for the students, for that. For all that to work, there is a very important element, which is the school culture. So as Sir Anthony mentioned, having the right culture helps people flourish. So a culture that recognizes the diverse ability of students, that celebrates the whole child, that promote an environment of trust, empowerment, and that would give agency for the students to learn.
What about these issues, very important issues, in fact, of social issues, right? Today, what we see is that many young people are very aware and they're engaged in social issues. So is there a responsibility here for educators and education policymakers in going beyond the standard subjects? We were talking about that a moment ago, beyond mathematics, beyond sciences, beyond languages, and addressing issues such as climate change, for example, something we're going to be discussing in the upcoming panel, and social justice.
Education is a powerful tool to change the way that we think and act. And, in terms of climate change, it's very important that education becomes practical and not only theoretical. And students today are very well aware of the issues that the world is facing today. The school can enable them by giving them the environment and providing the environment for them to take action, through pragmatic solutions. Students today have become the voice of the planet. We have seen them, they have strong opinions, and they talk about it with like-minded people. They demand strict action, for that. And yes, the schools do have a very important role to play into that.
Sir Anthony, final word to you. I know you wanted to jump in there.
Well, I think that schools need to be places where we shouldn't be afraid of the word love. Schools are too often places of fear of failure, fear of mistakes by teachers, fear of head teachers, of falling short. We need to put trust, a word that the minister used, and we need to remind ourselves finally what education is. The word means to lead out. That's what it means. It means lead out. I have never anywhere in the world met an education minister who's ever been able to tell me what the word education means, the drawing out. Never have I met an education minister until this afternoon who understands what that word means. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much. Sir Anthony, great to have you with us as well. Thank you for that very important discussion. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that you've heard this discussion, we've drawn the panorama of much-needed reforms in our educational systems, it's time to come back to the fundamental question of the purpose of education. So one would say that the aim of education is to equip our kids with the knowledge and skills they will need to be productive members of society. Others would argue that education should also equip learners to face the challenges of tomorrow, to create solutions, and to build the world that they want to live in. Well, today, young people, as you've been hearing, face great challenges, whether it's the anxiety of growing up in a world threatened by climate change, as we were just discussing, or witnessing economic inequalities and social injustices. In a global survey conducted by WISE in 2020, it's striking to note that 9 in 10 of the young people feel that their generation has a responsibility to change the world for the better. Another interesting report, this is from Brookings this year, flagged that in the US, 86% of teachers believe climate change, in fact, should be taught in school. But nearly 60% of them report they do not teach climate change, and that's because they believe it's outside of their subject area. You can see the data right there on the slides. So we're going to discuss with our next panelist the role of education in the face of these global issues. Is it too much of a burden to ask teachers to teach our kids how to save the world? How can sports and art contribute to strengthening the bedrock of values that actually unites people, generations, and cultures rather than separating them? So our next speakers will focus on these questions and more in the final panel discussion, Fixing School, Fixing the Planet. Let's welcome to the stage Kathleen Rogers, Nadia Nadim, Malik Jandali. Welcome. Hi. You're right there. Nadia. Hello, Malik. Thanks so much for joining us. So a lot of questions for you guys to answer. Kathleen Rogers, I'll start out with you. You're the president of the Earth Day Network. So we've been talking about one of the most pressing issues of our time, of course, and that is climate change. COP26, as you know, you were there, ended just a few weeks ago. You were there in Glasgow to ensure that climate education moves to a core subject for school curricula worldwide. Kathleen, what is the role of educators in particular when it comes to fighting climate change?
Well, I think I would agree with all of the previous speakers that as an organization, earthday.org absolutely believes in education for education's sake. Having said that, however, we are, as a planet, facing both the challenges of climate change and the opportunities that inevitably come when there's a crisis. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. And so our position and the position of other multilaterals, UNESCO and other organizations is that we want to give the students the opportunity, both at the K through 12 level and in universities, the opportunities to create and be part of the solution to climate. And so we are focused almost entirely in this endeavor in promoting what we call mandatory, assessed, meaning tested, climate literacy in schools. And by that we mean not just in STEM, science, math, technology, but in every component, every course that a child would take from K through 12 when they graduate and move on to universities. And we also believe that accompanying that opportunity, and interestingly, one of the themes of this important conference is to unmute students. And we also believe and that's part of climate change, allowing them the opportunity to speak and become engaged. And we also believe that they can be unleashed because in any revolution, whether it's the Industrial Revolution, the tech revolution, whatever it is, you see enormous interest and opportunities that countries perceive and then follow to educate their kids so they can take advantage of these revolutions. In the United States, there was no compulsory education at all until the first ship sailed in from the British made out of iron. It scared the United States, so they created mandatory education. So too, in other revolutions, the tech revolutions, where countries began to put more and more into technology. And our goal is not just to teach the science of climate, but again, to unleash those opportunities, those entrepreneurs, those innovators, those inventors, so that they can take advantage of the solutions.
So how much progress has been made to equip educators to address these issues in their classrooms? And if not enough progress has been made, what needs to be done to actually prepare them?
Well, I think the first opportunity we have is to build political will. What we saw in Glasgow, and from a substantive position, when you're looking at fossil fuels, it was unfortunately a step backwards. We did see a lot of progress. Some countries really jumped into the conversation about educating their students and, of course, training their teachers. And lastly, of course, where are we going to get the money? It's not inexpensive to change curricula, to educate teachers, but it has to be part of political will of a country, and they have to see the opportunity. There is no reason why every country on the planet can't be making its own solar panels or inventing things. All energy is local. And what we don't want to see is a handful of countries taking advantage of the opportunity that climate change presents and owning this next green revolution. It belongs to all of us. And so we have to educate our citizens and our children, unmute them, teach them about love and compassion for everyone else in the world who unfortunately will suffer from this crisis.
Okay.
Arm the teachers with the skills, and then build a united front of companies and NGOs and teachers and governments to build one solution. And it all works around education.
Okay, let's bring in Nadia Nadim. Hi, Nadia. You were raised in Denmark after you left Afghanistan as a child. Now, Denmark is known for its school system that's aimed at raising conscious citizens who will actively take part in society. I'll put it really simply. What is the purpose of education to you?
Big question. Yes, I feel I was lucky to be in a place where education is very important, and actually students get paid to attend universities monthly, which I felt was amazing. And you know, for me, the purpose of education, I feel, is very simple. It's to have the tools to solve the problems that you see or you might experience. It's almost like a power that's given to you. The power, a voice to bring the change, as I said. So, and then we do, environment is something that you talked about, is something very important in Denmark, and kids in school are being taught how to act towards it. School is important, obviously the upbringing you have at home is very important, but for me, the biggest factor is probably the government or the lawmakers, you know, the attitude towards the problems that you see. I think they're kind of setting the stage for the rest of us,
Right.
How you view everything and what's your attitude going to be towards it.
Okay, so Kathleen was mentioning that about the political will. Malik Jandali, hello. You are a renowned composer and pianist, humanist. You were also selected by the Carnegie Corporation of New York as a great immigrant. You're also the founder and CEO of Pianos for Peace. Tell us what you think is the purpose of education.
Salam and peace, everyone. In my humble opinion, the purpose of education is to listen. Unmute the silence. Listen to each other. Because what I see here in Doha is a symphony for peace, and we have an amazing conductor, the maestro, or the maestra, which is this amazing, wise summit. If we listen to each other, that's the first skill that we need as humans. And as a musician, and as an artist, especially with the soft power, the magic of arts and music, it teaches you respect, it teaches you to listen, and it teaches you to think and read. The first ever revealed word in Quran, in the Islamic faith, is read and think. It's often mentioned to listen. The soft power of the arts, especially music, which you can't see, you can't touch, its magic brings unity to the community. Mm-hmm. See, the word community has unity in it. But I believe music, especially music, brings people together. That's why we have amphitheaters in ancient civilizations. That we have here, you know, in Qatar, and the symphony, the major, you know, stadiums in sports. We're going to have the entire world next year here united under the soft power of sports and music. So I believe, humbly, in my personal opinion, that the arts and music in particular is the answer for having quality education for our next generation, especially the children.
Kathleen, on the issue of unity that Malik was just talking about, what role do you think schools can play in reconciling intergenerational conflicts and misunderstandings to foster efforts to create a better future?
Well, I agree that the purpose of school is to build that kind of unity.
Right.
Certainly students these days, not all, but many, are united in the fight against climate change, but they're also focused on social injustice and other issues related to building a broader, more meaningful, united global culture, which I think is critical to solving all sorts of problems, whether they're military or climate change or other cultural battles that we see constantly raging. So for us, climate change presents that opportunity to build a strong global social network. Oh, sorry.
A little bit. There you go. We can hear you better. Thank you.
And so we're hoping to build a broader social network that is built not just on the fear of climate change, but again, the opportunity, and to unite all of the resources in schools, among students, among educators, to bring together a global community that will not only be built on sharing the wealth that climate change will bring, but also ensuring that the role of education continues to be one that focuses on all subjects. I think we see increasingly the focus on technology to build or innovate our way out of climate change, but we believe equally that the arts, sport, psychology are all part of this global solution. And it starts with education. I don't have to tell anyone here that for most countries, education is among the least funded ministries or departments of any country. And so an emphasis and a focus on creating the next generation and making it equitable. Even in my own country, you can be in a state, one state where they're spending $15,000 per student per year and another $5,000. And so again, spending equal amounts of money, as Wendy and other people said, looking at each child with enormous, unlimited potential to play a role in both national affairs and community affairs, but also these global solutions.
Yeah.
So we have deep faith in the education system and what it can become, and the evidence, I think, is right here at this conference.
And Nadia, you've in fact championed girls' rights to education. You were named a UNESCO champion for girls and women's education just a few years ago. The fact is that there are 129 million girls that are still out of school today. That is according to UNICEF. Why is education so crucial to changing the lives of girls and especially the most vulnerable ones?
Imagine this. I'm just going to explain this very simple. For of you guys, the ones who know IKEA is like a Swedish furniture store.
Right.
Yes. If you go there and you buy a table, what you get home is a box where you have to assemble it yourself. Imagine not having the instructions. If any of you guys ever tried this, it's almost impossible. So for me,
certainly have.
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of similar. You know, these girls are taking the chance to have a normal or a proper life, having a voice, having the power again. And that's extremely sad. You know, it's a human right. It should be accessible for everyone. Because that's how you control your life. That's how you can have an impact on your community. That's how.
So how does it transform then? How does girls' education in particular transform communities and countries and ultimately the entire world?
Because I said education is a tool to solve problems. I think a lot of the problems that we do face are because of ignorance. And how do you change that? Is by educating people. Let me give you an example. You know, the importance of education and why girls' education in particular is very important. Because I don't want to step anyone on their toes by saying that women do have a huge impact on their children and how they're going to view the world and how important their lives later on going to be. My mom was the first one to, before my mom, everyone in her family was illiterate. And she, when she was 6 years old, had to hide that she had been submitted to school from her father because she was a Muslim girl and culture, tradition, and everything at that point said that she shouldn't go to school, attend school. But she wanted to, and because of her now, the entire generation and how we view on education has changed. I'm about to become a doctor. My sister's a doctor. We have 2 nurses in our family, and and I could tell you, like, guarantee that my kids are gonna be educated. So that's why I think it's very important to educate women, because they're gonna push the next generation to also be educated, and then that's how you're gonna have impact on the society, and then eventually change the world for the better.
Malik, if you'd like to add on to anything that Nadia or Kathleen were saying, and also I know that you visited Syrian children in refugee camps. What was that experience like in the context of education? And maybe what did they teach you?
They were the best educators. When I crossed the borders, I brought them musical instruments, thinking that that's what they need to bring the happiness, the fun. And I reached their tents in the middle of nowhere. Many families were living on olive trees, and they rejected the musical instruments. They said, we need umbrellas. Went back to Turkey, exchanged all the musical instruments with umbrellas. But I listened to their needs. I listened to the children. Why do you need umbrellas? One word: dignity. When they wanted to go to the bathroom, they wanted to be covered outdoors in that tent so nobody can see them. I was crying. They taught me more than what I was planning to do to them. So they didn't need music. In my humble opinion, the purpose of education should be one word: human. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to go to our basic human values. We're all going all over the world after this amazing World Summit. Please connect. I connected to Wendy, to Kathleen. We're going to do a symphony for Earth Day. Each one of us has their own or her own thumbprint. Please, tonight, I invite you to look closely at your own thumbprint, because nobody ever in history, in mankind history, or will ever have your own thumbprint. Each one of you is so unique. But guess what? You cannot change the world. We need each other. And that's what music and the arts do. It unites. For example, at Pianos for Peace, we bring the police department. In the States, the police are shooting innocent victims in the back. So what do? We call him a peace officer rather than a police officer. We change the narrative. We go to underserved schools. In the United States, ladies and gentlemen, we have schools with no pianos. What do? Try to bridge the gap. I can't do it by myself. That's why we had Coca-Cola, the city, the mayor, the private sector. It is a symphony. The word symphony in Latin comes from symphonia. It means to sing together. Not to sing by myself as a soloist. Please unite, respect and believe in your thumbprint, and be together. It is always better to be together in a symphony for peace.
So it's that collaborative effort that's so important, and we've heard this time and time again, in fact, throughout the past 3 days. Kathleen, we've spoken about the role of schools and teachers to educate our kids about the responsibility towards the planet. Is it just up to them, or is there anyone else that we should be looking at?
Well, it's I think our collective experience that community is an important element of any person's education. The parents always bring so much to the table. They have so much interest in their children becoming part of, whether it's a global economy or a musician or some other discipline because of their own background. And so part of the role of education is to engage, obviously, teachers and students, but also to carry those messages and that hope into the community. Whether it's the United States or any other country, there are schools without heating and air conditioning in cold places, or schools without pencils and paper or books. There are extraordinary photos here that tell the story of, I was at Education for All, and they have this fabulous photo that tells a story of a destroyed area of a country where the children are leaning against a stone wall and there's someone teaching them. And I asked them, what is this photo? And the response was, this is education. And it involved, again, not just the children and the teacher, but the community members who had such great interest in it. So for us, whether it's solving climate change or global tensions and wars or preventing them, it's critically important that you put all of these elements together and build a united society for, not just for our children, but our children's children. And while that may sound trite, that's exactly where we're going. And the reason climate change and other issues are so important is because they have the unfortunate consequence of being able to change the planet entirely. And so what we need to do is unmute our students, unmute our teachers, unmute the communities, and unleash the collective spirit. Again,
and you, in fact, say, Kathleen, that climate literacy and civic skill building will solve the climate crisis.
Yeah, there are three elements of this global campaign that people are joining. It's climate literacy, again, in every single subject. We're going to need musicians. We're going to need psychologists for the reasons we talked about today, the concern about mental health. We're going to need engineers, doctors. We're going to need everyone engaged. And so it's part of this effort to build, again, global community that will unleash those spirits, unmute the students, and collectively, I think we'll be able to do that, not just, again, for climate change's sake, but in order to build the future. And it's a future, we're going to have to reimagine everything in this room. This building is new. But over the next 50 years, everything that we do will have to be reimagined, again, from music to art to literature, social science, history, medicine.
Right.
So it's really important for us to bring all these people to the table in one united front. And for us, that includes civic skill building. If students and their parents don't have the opportunity to figure out what the science is of climate change, if they don't have access to information, if they can't challenge their governments and corporations for the things that they often do for some other reason, then we've really not completed the education of a student unless we've given them the civic skills and the opportunities for jobs, whatever those may be, art, music, medicine, of the future. So it's important to bring those elements together in order to give the kind of education that we will need for the 21st and the 22nd century.
Nadia, for anyone that might not know, you succeeded as a professional football player, and you're now dedicating yourself to healing others as a doctor. You were mentioning that just a moment ago. Looking at the current state of the world, we can certainly more anticipate that more crises will come our way, unfortunately. And just a moment ago, you were talking about your mother and her resilience. How do you think we can cultivate that type of resilience into the children of today to prepare them for future crises?
Great question. I don't think you can actually, teach resilience. I think this is something that comes with experience, with life experience. I think what we could, or maybe should, teach our children is to have a perspective. I think that's gonna, as Malik was talking about, listening or understanding, that's gonna increase understanding among each other. Me being able to set myself in someone else's perspective allows me to understand their situation and listen to their problems. And also for your own sake, having perspective makes you appreciate life, and you would be a bit more grateful. So I'll focus more on that than the resilience. I think resilience is built through time and through your experiences. It's hard to teach resilience. I don't know. What do you think, Malik?
Yeah. Malik, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree and disagree. I truly believe, listen, look, at the end of the day, for example, if I want to represent my country, or let's say the state of Qatar, how do you represent it? At FIFA World Cup or at the Olympics or even here, you don't represent it by data or by the numbers of school, you represent it by two pieces of art. One is the flag of that country. Number two is the national anthem of that country. And many countries, thank you, many countries don't have even lyrics. For example, Spain, their national anthem has no lyrics, not a single word. So in my humble opinion, I truly, and I cannot emphasize enough, especially in the Arab world, how important the arts and the music in particular has that. It's our duty to bring the arts and the music, as we talked with Kathleen, to the classrooms. It's often ignored. It's like always viewed as entertainment. It is the essence of education because it teaches you how to, how to respect.
Yeah, so
listen.
what are the life skills, Malik, that music can teach?
Teamwork.
Right.
For example, if you look at an orchestra, every member of the orchestra is performing a different line. Sometimes it's like dissonance. But they're all harmonious. You have the conductor. Everybody is listening to each other. If they are not listening to each other, they're not going to be on the beat. Rumi said, wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. Your soul. At the end of the day, when you go to a concert, you don't see music, you see the musician. But music is in the air, it transcends all barriers, geographics, geopolitics, you name it. It goes straight to the heart without anybody's permission. To me, it's the epic of freedom. And that's why it's so important. Cultural diplomacy. I mean, how do you build bridges between nations? Art, sports. The entire world is going to come and unite under sports and music. So please, it is our duty to collaborate and bring the arts and music to the classrooms so we can bring the soul back to teachers, to students, so we can have that symphony for peace that we are all a member of.
Well, okay, so that's from an artistic point of view. Kathleen, what are the life skills that teaching social justice issues can teach a person or a child?
Well, and I agree that we can use art and music to do that.
Yeah.
It's about opportunity. It's about respect. Too many of young people, principally social media, but also the lack of community, I think, has undermined that sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself. And so it is essential in any school, and the United States is particularly strange on this subject, but we are so concerned about getting the wrong values that we teach no values at all. And that is part of the lapse in education, but it's not just the United States, so many other countries. Or that set of values that they teach are insular and inward-looking and focused on themselves or a particular issue. And so broadening education is to be truly global and building that empathy, building global citizenship. All of those things are looked upon in many countries with distrust and concern. And so one of the elements of what we're concerned about, and particularly in the subject of climate change, which is unavoidable, it will hurt and help all of us, is that we need to build that sense of community, but not just in our schools, our neighborhoods, our state, our national government, but with the world at large. And I think that's the only way we're going to solve climate change and build more empathetic, loving, human people.
Nadia, final word to you from I know you're on your way to being a doctor now, but from a sports point of view, what are the life skills that sports can teach?
I think, very similar. Malik was explaining. Obviously, unity is a big part because you cannot win anything if you're trying to do things solo. So you have to be able to work together. I think also it teaches you how to understand each other. And most foremost, the most important part is probably respect. Because you have so many different characters on the field that are your teammates. For you to be able to achieve your goals, you have to respect and understand them. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. And that's the biggest thing I think that sports, teachers taught me, to be honest. And definitely something that you could also use in education.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Such an inspiring conversation, really, that reminds us of the future and the fate of the planet is in fact in our hands and in everybody's hands. And we can start with our young people and their education, as you've been hearing. Thank you so much. Nadia, Kathleen, you can now return to your seats. We appreciate your time with us. Thank you. This way. Nadia, Kathleen, Malik, I'll just ask you to stay right there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Malik, we're very privileged to have you perform for us today, and you're going to perform your original music. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In my hand is a replica of the oldest music notation ever known to mankind. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled and honored that my ancestors in Mesopotamia invented to humanity not only the alphabet, the A, B, C of the world, but the alphabet of music, Do, Re, Mi. This tablet, I call it the first tablet, was about a woman who was asking the moon's god to have a baby so her civilization can continue. I invite you to join me in imagining people just like you, 1400 BC. People were funny, they had a theater, they had instruments, they were innovative, and we are grateful to them that they changed the course of history from oral preservation into writing. Ladies and gentlemen, close your eyes and enjoy the music of Ugarit. The title is Echoes from Ugarit. Close your eyes, imagine people just like you and me singing to this chant, praying to the Creator at the time to have a baby so your civilization can continue. Thank you very much. That was the Doha premiere of the oldest music notation. Let me quote Rumi. Rumi said, "Let the beauty of what you love be what you do." Let the beauty of what you love be what you do. My next composition is based on ancient Arabic music, particularly a theme by Al-Sheikh Ali Darwish, who was a Muslim scholar, an educator, and a musician. And it is my duty as an artist to preserve the culture and present it on the international stage. And that's my mission in life. I hope you enjoy these themes from the Silk Road that this land and Mesopotamia embraced for you and for generations to come. It is always better to be together in a symphony for peace. Thank you so much. Thank you. I played from the bottom of my heart. One request before you leave. Be kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malik. We can tell that you played from the bottom of your heart. Thank you for that incredibly moving performance, Malik. And, you know, as we've been saying, and as has just been demonstrated, the arts are such an important part of our education, our societies, and our humanity as well. Malik, thank you so much, once again. Well, to close WISE 2021, the WISE CEO, Stavros Yanuka, will leave us with some final thoughts. Mr. Yanuka.
Thank you, Doreen, and thank you, Maestro. At some point, I'm going to have to rethink the structure of the closing because coming on after someone like Malik, I can only disappoint. Madam Vice President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, amid a resurgent global pandemic, we nevertheless managed to come together in person here in Doha, and of course online, for 3 days of conversation, inspiration, and recommitment to the cause of quality education for all. Of course, none of this would be possible without the vision and drive of Her Highness Sheikha Moza and the unstinting support of the whole of Qatar Foundation. Highness, Excellency, colleagues and friends, thank you. It's not possible for me to give a full reflection on the more than 200 sessions that took place during this, the 10th edition of the Global WISE Summit. We'd literally be here all night. Let me instead just share a few highlights. Her Highness began by calling on us to build a generation equipped to participate in decision-making and contribute to solving global challenges. Now, the unmuted voice of young people has always been heard at WISE and indeed across Qatar Foundation, this year especially so, with our young curators, the Youth Studio, and WISE On Air. All of these features, I'm happy to say, will become now regular appearances at future WISE summits. We also celebrated our most recent WISE Prize laureate, who, as she herself mentioned as a student, created a global movement that engages young people to develop and apply their energies and talents to education. We have seen the effects of this right here in Qatar through the success of Teach for Qatar that was established in 2014. Education leadership has always been a core pillar of WISE research and programs, and the addition of the TFA movement to the WISE family will only strengthen our efforts in this area, both in Qatar and beyond. During this summit, we also heard a great deal about the importance of well-being and of ethics and values as integral to the education enterprise. These priorities are at the heart of Qatar Foundation's progressive education and multiversity strategies. At WISE, we will redouble our efforts to support these priorities through our research and programs and to ensure that our work in these areas continue to also be of relevance to the Ministry of Education, with which WISE has built a strong research collaboration exemplified by one of our recently published reports on the impact of the pandemic on the well-being of teachers. Of course, we heard a great deal about EdTech, the adoption of which has been accelerated by the pandemic. Since 2015, WISE has been running a small but successful education technology accelerator that has thus far supported 42 startups around the world. In response to this, WISE plans to grow its EdTech accelerator and testbed programs in collaboration with like-minded organizations from Qatar and the world. The 2021 summit will also be remembered as the year when WISE met TED in Arabic. WISE will continue to grow its Arabic language programming, and you should expect to hear more Arabic voices, music, and art at future summits. It would, of course, be remiss of me not to mention WISE's long-time collaboration with the Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy that in 2022 will bring the World Cup and the world to Qatar. WISE, of course, will be there, again making the case that sport, along with music and the arts, are essential elements of a well-rounded education, and we heard that loud and clear on the panel that preceded this closing. Music and arts were especially well represented this year. At WISE, we just witnessed a virtuoso performance. But Maestro, if you allow me, I can't help myself. I tried very hard, but I can't help myself. Sinfonia, Maestro, is a Greek word, not Latin. And it means to come together and speak with one voice. But you know what? It doesn't matter whether it's Greek or Latin. It belongs to the world now. And you are an apt demonstration of that. The WISE 2021 Summit celebrated once again 6 inspiring initiatives that demonstrated that innovation in education is a daily reality around the world, and that more often than not, what stands in the way of these innovations scaling is not lack of knowledge or resources, but political will and leadership. And that is why I want to once again congratulate our strategic partner, the Education Above All Foundation, for working tirelessly to unlock that political will and leadership and to put it to work so that we can accelerate our journey to zero out-of-school children. We witnessed some of this earlier this afternoon at the special EAA plenary, and I want to here acknowledge Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Gambia, and acknowledge the work that your government is doing, ma'am, to get us to zero. Thank you. Again, let me congratulate the WISE Awards winners, and just allow me to make one mention, or one specific mention of one of the award-winning projects, and that's Talimabad, which was initiated by Orenda. Now, those of you who were yesterday at the WISE Awards plenary and were paying attention might recall that Talimabad in Urdu means city of education. It's no accident, because Orenda was conceived right here in Education City, the home of Qatar Foundation. Orenda's founder, Harun Yassin, I think he's around here somewhere. They're pointing, there he is. He was a student here at Georgetown University, Qatar, and he developed and refined his plans for Orenda during his time on the 2015 WISE Learner's Voice program. He's now looking forward, I think, to collaborating, hopefully, with the Education Above All Foundation. And I'll wrap up soon. The story of Harun is just one of the many stories that reveals the real magic of WISE. WISE is more than this wonderful event. WISE is a movement. It's a community animated by the idea that through education, you can improve the human condition, one child, one teacher, one school at a time. In the years and decades to come, the world is going to need movements like WISE to be catalysts for collective intelligences and energies to tackle the challenges ahead that are so neatly encapsulated in the Education Above All drive to get to zero. Zero out-of-school children, and here I want to add, in a net zero carbon world. What remains is for all of us to ask ourselves, are we ready to do what it takes to change the world for the better?
What are you ready to do to change the world for the better? Are you ready to unlearn and relearn? To change your mind and think anew about what it means to be human? Are you ready to walk in someone else's shoes? To see the world through someone else's eyes? Are you ready to listen, to give voice to those who have been muted for far too long? Are you ready to empower others, the young and the old, to be the best that they can be? To create leaders who learn and then lead? Are you ready to show up, to work alongside those who do not look or speak like you for the good of all? Are you ready to invent and to innovate? To fail, but pick yourself and others up and never give in? Are you ready to hope, to reclaim and build the future, our future? Are you ready to be wise?
So what a wonderful film, which demonstrates what it means to be part of the WISE community, as Mr. Yanuka was just talking about, and what can be achieved if we join forces to build the future of education all together. Thank you all for your participation in WISE 2021. Delegates and speakers from 117 countries took part in this unique edition of the summit here in Doha, as well as online. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank once again our knowledge partners who helped us put together such a diverse program. Thank you to our media partners, the many journalists who have actively contributed to create meaningful conversations online and here in person in Qatar. And finally, I'd like to thank the sponsors, ExxonMobil and Visa, for their valuable support throughout the summit. We look forward to seeing you again in 2 years' time. In the meantime, you can always stay in touch on the WISE social media. We encourage you to do so. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic evening.